one thing would be like half online, half in person. But I just like in person. I know we have to do it for this semester, and probably next semester. But it's just,
Yeah, I am very much a face-to-face person.
yes, I get way too distracted. Like, I'll just look at the wall when I'm on Zoom and just like toes off.
Well, that's why I record these because I know how easily distracted I get. I'm using this stuff. Well, it is 8 o'clock, and let's go ahead and get started, because as soon as we get started, the quicker we can go. So there you go. So let me tell you what's going to happen the next. Today, we're finishing up some issues on autism, specifically going to look at evidence-based strategies that are proven to be very effective for kids on the autism spectrum. And you guys on out in virtual world, well, this will be, I'm already sharing my screen with you guys and recording this, so it's good to go. Okay, so next week on Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to look at some more strategies that pick up some of the strategies for kids with intellectual disabilities. We're going to look at some pieces of that, how some things that we need to do in the classroom. We're going to talk about task analysis, and we'll look at some behavior strategies, some communication strategies, those kind of things that we'll look at next week. They're evidence-based also. And these are all evidence-based. We'll look at some high leverage practices. And then on Thursday is the end of basically like the last class period for this module. Everything is due on that Saturday, the 14th by midnight. The test for module 4 will be open on Friday morning at midnight, and it'll go for a week, and just like I've been doing the tests. So it'll be available online for that, and I always have to go in and score things, because if I do fill in the blank, even if you don't use a capital or something, like I use the capital, then it won't score it correct, so I have to go in and fix all those. So that's why you get a weird score at first, and then I come back and I fix it. Make sense? Okay. All right, so we're going to look at specific strategies that work with kids on the autism spectrum today. There is the Applied Behavior Analysis Group, board certified behavior analysts, really are the movers and shakers for a lot of the stuff that happened in autism. New mask, it's the beard that causes it to fall down. So they look at, they look at behavior, they look at all actions as behavior, learning, etc. And they see it from the lens of the ABCs, like we talked about in emotional behavior disorders. The ABCs being the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. So they look at that. Well, we're going to talk about these strategies are antecedent changing strategies. These will change the chain of outcome for a student. So these will focus on the A portion where we change the antecedent. The behaviors then come and play, and then you get reinforced through positive interactions with others. So it's the antecedent piece, all of these. So structured activities and environments are the #1 strategy. This comes with structured teaching is the most effective strategy for kids on the autism spectrum because you are changing the environment and making it conducive for learning. So that's a huge element. So when we look at that, so we'll go to, before we get real deep into this discussion, I'm going to play a video for you guys of a it's a preschool classroom for children on the autism spectrum. Now you're saying, okay, Dr. Cabot, preschool, how does this affect me? And I'm going to be teaching secondary kids. Well, the strategies are the same. They're just geared to be age appropriate. So what I want you to do as you watch this video, I want you to take notes, and you guys virtually do the same thing. Identify some strategies that you can use in the content area that you guys are going to be working in and how that can be effective. There's one situation where I want you to pay attention, close attention to that. A young man's hyper focus in this video is trains. And watch how the teacher handles a potential meltdown situation and handles it in a way that is very effective and proactive. So watch for that one. I'll point it out to you guys too. All right.
Started approximately 35 years ago as a collaborative effort between the parents of children with autism, the University of North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina to provide exemplary service, training, and research programs for people with autism and their families. The Asheville preschool program is one splendid example of how the TEACH model, called structured teaching, can enhance educational opportunities and independence for a group of children in an educational setting.
The goals of our program are to provide direct educational services for 3 and 4-year-olds with autism, to provide education and support for parents of preschoolers with autism, to establish a demonstration classroom to utilize as a site for ongoing professional training, to establish a model program to demonstrate appropriate inclusive programming for youngsters with autism, to collect data to support research efforts in the field of autism, specifically to show the effectiveness of structured teaching strategies used with young children who have autism, and to establish a model program that can be replicated by other professionals who work with autistic students. This film is designed to give teachers, parents, and daycare providers ideas for setting up structured teaching strategies with youngsters who have autism.
demonstration classroom implements structured teaching strategies to help the students get meaning from the environment, make transitions, and stay focused and open to learning. In this video, we're going to highlight the three main aspects of the structured teaching approach: physical structure, individualized daily schedules, and work systems. Physical structure refers to the placement and organization of furniture and materials. It provides visually clear boundaries and segments the environment into meaningful parts, helping the students better understand where they need to be. Physical structure also limits distractions and minimizes sensory overload. There are several learning areas that are defined by physical structure in the preschool classroom. Students go to play area for short periods of time between structured activities. The play area contains a variety of developmentally appropriate and interesting toys that encourage exploration and the development of play skills. Colton is using a picture communication system to choose a preferred activity. Group activities encourage cooperative play and turn-taking. Each student has an independent work area where he goes several times a day to practice mastered skills. The work area uses physical structure to minimize distractions and the work system to promote independence.
What's first?
Each student receives daily one-to-one instruction to work on IEP objectives.
All right, let's count. 1, 2, 3. Good.
All right, good job. Good job.
Snack and lunch are ideal times to work on communication skills using each child's visual communication system.
Colton, what do you want? What is it? All right, here's a pile.
Structured play centers are used to build on the strengths and interests of the students with autism. Computer time, painting, and water table are often favorites. Each student has an individualized daily schedule, which visually depicts the sequence of activities he will be expected to do. The individualized daily schedule helps the student make transitions more easily and builds flexibility. Each student's schedule is individualized in terms of the cue used to represent activities or areas, the length or number of activities depicted, and the way in which the schedule is manipulated. Schedules are oriented from top to bottom or left to right.
Work.
Many young students with autism use transition objects. Here, the teacher hands Jaren a clothespin that represents independent work time. Each activity in Jaren's day is represented by an object which tells him visually and concretely what will happen next.
Computer.
Good for you. You finished your work. Where's it go? Hooray. Hooray. That's it.
Schedule.
Now pay attention to this. This is the situation I was talking about.
What's next? For the train. Work and then train. Work first.
Who's that dragon? The fiery dragon.
Good job, Patton.
The work system provides the student with 4 pieces of important information. It visually tells him what work he will do, how much work he will do, when he will be finished, and what happens next. When students better understand the expectations for learning, they are calmer and more able to focus on their work activities or assignments. The work system is an organizational learning tool that is taught at the student's independent work area and then integrated into all aspects of their program to enhance generalization of skills.
Oh, called it.
Hooray, work.
What's next? What's next? Good job, Pat. First, let's work. Let's work. That's it.
All right, good job. Good job.
So, did you guys identify some things? What about the young man in the train situation? Was that an interesting thing? It could have been a potential meltdown situation, but he knows that he works first, then he gets the train. So it's a first then kind of a schedule. So the way that this is done, if you notice, they all had schedules that they followed. And you start with a first then schedule. So you have two things to do. They have their work, and then they get their reinforcement. And then as they get used to that, then you go two things and then a reinforcement. And then you go to three things and then on and on and on until they're doing their work consecutively. So that's all, you see, it's all about structuring the environment for them to be engaged. Did you find these kids to be fully engaged in the work they were doing? Now here's the surprising thing. You might think they've been doing it all year and this is like at the end of the year. This is actually 1 week. This is the second week of school. They've been in for the 1 week, never been in school before. So this was a real quick turnaround. And if you structure the environment to answer the questions of what do I have to do? How much do I have to do? When am I finished? And what do I do next? If your environment provides that information for them, will kids be engaged or disengaged in the work environment? So this all is antecedent stuff up front. If you change these things, then they work better. So we're going to talk about some more of these pieces. So, but when we start working with kids on the autism spectrum, we need to think about them as if they came from a different culture. What we know from kids on the autism spectrum is they do not process oral language well at all. That's very difficult for them. So instead of using a lot of language, did you hear a lot of talking going on in that classroom? There's very little. The structured teaching approach kind of has a mantra, talk less, teach more. If they know what to do, your talking is minimized. So that's an important piece. So talk less, teach more. Use structure. If you go to, say, we're going to go on a trip and we go to Greece. How are we going to interact in Greece? Pretty, different language, different alphabet, all sorts of different things, right? So we have to depend on visual cues to give us information to get around. That's what we need to do with kids on the autism spectrum. Think of it as a different culture, a different environment for them. Kids on the autism spectrum want to be shown, not told. So you need to use a lot of visual cues, a lot of modeling, those kind of things. We talk about directions. My daughter and I have a discussion about this, and we talked about this in communication, that men and women give directions differently. Women use landmarks, men use north, south, east, and west. So if you're talking to your girlfriends, guys, use landmarks. And you guys can do both. But it's true, isn't it? Isn't it true? My wife and I talk about it all the time. She says, how do you know? I'm kind of like, I know where I park. And I said, well, I always notice, are we north of the building, south of the building, east of the building, whatever. And then when we go out, then I know if I'm northwest or whatever, I know the direction that we are, so I'm always tuned into where we parked and not monitoring the parking lot. And she said she would be lost without me because she would just be lost. Because the parking lots look all the same, right? So that's an interesting thing. So they want to be shown, not told. So use visual cues, visual strategies, modeling, etc. Again, we talked about last Tuesday, we talked about executive functioning skills. They have great difficulty with this. That's the front part of the brain that develops and develops last. And so they really struggle on those pieces. They struggle on processing. If you want to have them process information quicker, use visual cues, not verbal skills. They won't process very well with verbal, but they will process well with visual. They are not a multitasker. They do things one at a time. So if you give them 3 directions, they'll do the first one or they'll do the last one. They won't get the other one done. So what you'll need to do instead of giving this verbally is you give it to them on a schedule. Vacuum under the couch. When you're finished with that, take out the dog. When you're finished with that, pick up your clothes. When you're finished with that, sit down and have a soft drink or something, So you do things singularly. They do them one at a time, and they don't multitask. Kind of like guys. We don't multitask a lot either. So that's important. I know, I'm there. I have a good memory. This is something to remember about kids on the spectrum, but they don't have a good sequence of events. So you're going to have to sequence things for them. So they remember well, just like this slide here, they don't sequence this very well. So you need to give them this external sequence to work through. So have a schedule. And then when they're finished, they put a mark on this. I've had all my schedules for my kids on the spectrum they're laminated, and I use wipe-off pens. I bought a bunch of these, so the small ones. And so I would just have it attached to the clipboard for the kid, and he would mark off this stuff as he goes through, and that way he knows he's done, and the sequence is there for him. Is this something that in a general education classroom you can do for your kids? Say like you're doing a writing assignment. Would you have the task broken down into all the different pieces and then have a sequence of events, and then they know they're finished? Is that what a rubric is? It is a sequence. That's what a syllabus is. It's a sequencing, externalized sequencing tool. So it's important. Remember, these kids are either be sensory seeking or sensory defensive. So all this stuff can really be problematic. You need to know the kid. Are they a seeker? Are they a avoider of sensory stuff? And sometimes it can distract. Temperature in the classroom. You know, you hear that a colder classroom is supposed to be better for you to stay awake. Well, that's not what they found to be true. The perfect temperature for learning to occur, a research study showed it was like 72 degrees in the classroom. That's perfect temperature for learning to occur. You don't fall asleep as easily. You stay awake. You're not too cold and distracted by the cold. Those kind of things. Make sure they're in an environment that is not distracted by the sensory pieces. That's important. Remember, they're not good at concepts or great at details. So that's important. So we kind of use their strengths to teach them details and concepts. We talked about the weak lack of central coherence. Again, they focus on the details, not on the big picture. So we have to take them and directly instruct them to learn the big picture concepts. That's important. So those are the things that we see. Organization. Here's an interesting thing. It says if you just let me organize things, it's going to be terrible. You won't know where things are that I need organized. But if you organize them and set up a structure for me, then I will always be flexible. So for example, you look at this chest of drawers. It's got different clothing things, but it's got a visual symbol there. If it didn't have a visual symbol and you were wanting to move take the sweatshirts out, move them to a different drawer, or move them away, and you have tank tops, let's say. So you're going to put tank tops in summer, you're going to put tank tops down here in this, instead of sweatshirts or long sleeve shirts. If you didn't have that, and that day, that student was really your child was really in the mood to wear a long sleeve shirt regardless of the temperature, and you removed and you took them all out, but you didn't show that they were changed, what do you think would happen? You think you might have a meltdown? You'd have a meltdown. But if you show him and say, okay, the long sleeve shirts are gone, we have tank tops here now, the long sleeve shirts are gone. Then you've got this structure in place. You can move the tank tops from there to where the pants were. You just have to make sure the icon is moved with it. It makes, if you have a structure for all kids, it's easier for them to be flexible. Without a structure, it's chaos. So flexibility comes with structure, not with more freedom. Does that make sense? So the more you structure things, the more flexible you can be. For example, if you're on the freeway, what's the slowest speed you can drive on a freeway without getting in trouble? Supposedly.
10 to 12 miles.
It's 45, right? It's 45 miles an hour is the slowest speed on a freeway that you can drive without getting a ticket. And around here, what's the top speed? 75? So let's say between 45 and 75, if you have plenty of choices that you can make, can you be flexible? So between 45 and 75, you're not going to necessarily get in trouble. You're covered by the law. But if you drive slower than that, you can get a ticket. If you drive faster than that, you can get a ticket. So those are some things to think about, is that abundant living is within the structure, not outside the structure. Make sense? So that's why we need to really structure our kids, especially our kids with autism, because they don't have an internalized structure system. It's very chaotic for them. If you want them to set a table, use jigs. This is a cool little jig that set a table. If you just tell them to just, Johnny, go set the table, and Johnny would go and put all the whatever the dishes and stuff were in the kit to put up on the table, he'd just put them there without any order. But if you see, those placemats are jigs. You have a place for a plate, they have a place for a knife and fork, and a place for a glass. And does it answer those 4 questions? What do I have to do? Set the table. How much do I have to do? Fill up those 4 placemats, correct? When do I know I'm finished? When would he be finished?
Fill them all 4 placements.
When they're all, something's on each of the pieces. And then you'd have a schedule for him to do what's next, would be tell everybody the table's ready, or something like that, whatever it is. But you have another icon to tell them what's next. And that's with this is a great strategy. Is this a strategy you can use with all students or just kids with the spectrum disorder? All students, disability or not. This is a universal design strategy. We use this with our kids when they were growing up to help them learn how to set the table. When I was a waiter and had to set tables, or a busboy and had to set tables, we learned with a jig and a model, and then we had to set everything the same way. I worked in a steakhouse, and so they had a very specific way they wanted it set up. All right, here's another. This is a task analysis of doing a washing clothes, and it starts with what you put into the thing, and then what you do to turn it on. And then down here, the finished you would take the finished thing and go over to your schedule and see what you have to do next. So you know what you have to do. It's a task analysis from beginning to end. And there's a person, you have to teach each of the tasks, and you do a forward chain, and we'll talk about forward chaining and task analysis next week. It'll be fun. Knowing what kids on the spectrum hate uncertainty, hate ambiguity, you need to be very concrete. They're very concrete. So you need to tell them. Like, here's a 3-step, like the first then, this is a 3-step. First work, and then you can play. After playtime is computer. And that way they know exactly what they can do. Now, what happens if you want to move play to the beginning and not at the middle? You would just move the icon. You would move work here, play there. So they would know play, work, computer, And then the next day, you might change it to where it's computer work play. But as long as the icon's there, they know, they follow that structure, you don't have a problem for the student to engage. Make sense? And the one up on the left, that's a first then schedule. When I went to the training for structured teaching, we were given our student, and we had a week with a student, and we had to start them off. They'd never been in school before. I had a 4-year-old little girl that I had to start with the first then schedule. Within 5 minutes, she was following that schedule. Great. And loved it. Said, "What's next? What's next?" And I was dentist cavity. Dentist cavity. She called me, "Dentist cavity, what's next?" It was fun, both of the ones. We had a good time. So here's one, like a weekly schedule for activities. On Monday, they might go running. On Tuesday, they're swimming. Wednesday's a haircut. Thursday's bowling, and Friday's shopping. What happens, what does this mean? That you're done, right? Okay, what happens if on Thursday, the bowling place is closed, so they're gonna go skating instead? What would you do? You would just remove the bowling one, put the skating one on, and earlier is better, say, by the way, on Thursday, the bowling lanes are closed, we're going to go skating. And then they see this, and they're okay. So you have to do it up front. It's kind of teaching them those strategies up front. In your classroom, if you have strategies, for example, this might be a strategy for turning in homework. So you have a big sign that says, "Turn homework in here." And you might have it on Monday at that table. On Tuesday, it might be at that table. But what are they looking for? Are they looking for the area over there? Or are they looking for the sign? They're looking for the sign. So again, does that allow for flexibility? Do you see how this is making it much more available for all students, not just students on the spectrum? This is a jig for turn taking. So you would turn it around. If it was not that person's turn, the next person would be playing there. This is a reminder for them when they're cooking. Do not lick when cooking. Why was it needed? Yeah, they were making cookies or something, so they started licking the spoons, right? We do that all the time. We eat bits and pieces of our stuff, right? Mom, when can I have the beater blades? I have the beater blades. I'm done. Important. It's important to remember, if you don't tell me what to expect, I'll make my own assumptions, and then I will have a meltdown. Just like little Kyle on the train, if he didn't know that he was going to get the train, he would have had a meltdown. So the beauty of this is we use so much Velcro in special ed, it's incredible. So this week, we're going to go to aisle 7 at the store and get cookies, goldfish, and popcorn. Next week, it might be nuts and popcorn and a Powerade or something. And the way we know we're finished is when we get the cookies, we got the cookies, put it in the finished. Goldfish, put it in the finished. Popcorn, put it in the finished. See how that works? It's an easy strategy for students to learn these things. And for all students, not just students on the spectrum or students with a disability. Again, schedules. So I don't want to beat that horse around. Here's a understanding a strategy. looking at this picture, does it answer those 4 questions? It doesn't answer the last one there, but does it answer the top 3? What do I have to do? Just by the way it's set up. What do you put here? The pink stick, right? And what do you put in the yellow circles? The yellow erector set thing, tinker toy. You separate them, put those there. How much do you have to do? There's 4 things, right? When do you know you're finished? They're all gone. And then you've trained them to look at their schedule to say what's next, so they go to see what's next. So this is you can do this with any activity. General ed kids, say you're doing a writing, first thing in the morning, they do a writing assignment or a journal assignment. You could have a schedule that says, write in your journal, put your journal in your box, then go get your reading book. Whatever it is that you're having, you have that process. And it could be very simple. For example, here's a writing. Write 2 sentences using a noun and a verb and an adjective about this picture. A writing assignment. See how simple it can be. Right? And you can do that for anybody. I know this is very basic, but think of it more complex as you move on with kids. Other schedules. Now the next thing that I use a lot is power cards. This is just a 1 card, like about yay big, like a 5x7 piece of paper. Read this power card, and why do you think I needed to develop this power card?
Visual and schedule just to,
Pardon?
I was just thinking when you get a visual to show the schedule just to teach that work.
He was having trouble with what? Picking his nose, right? And so his favorite character was Captain America. So I used Captain America as the person here. This was on his table. He also had one that he carried with him from class to class. So Captain America says, and so we read through it together with him. Captain America says, picking your nose is not cool. When Captain America wants to pick his nose, he does the following things. And look at number 6. He does not show it to others, but throws the tissue in the trash. Because sometimes kids on the spectrum, they like to show you things. So you have to be very specific. So, but it worked. The thing was, all I had to do if he started to pick his nose was walk by and tap the card. That's it. I didn't have to say a word. And it was 2 days he was not picking his nose anymore. It's kind of awesome when you think about this. It's really powerful. Simple. Can be used with anybody. Can be very obscure. It doesn't have to be big. Comic strip conversations. I use these a lot. I have little small white wipe-off boards, and it helps you teach them interactions and how to think. When you see a bubble like this, what does that usually mean? A conversation, right? Bubbles like this means what? Thinking. So you can have multiple pieces. So you use it for students with trouble interpreting social situations. So you're going to help them understand social situations without all the complex stuff. So you're going to just use basic shapes and stuff. It's a conversation between two or more people using simple illustrations. Why do we do it? So to show children how to behave in socially acceptable ways. It's just a way to break down those skills. How effectiveness can be enhanced by incorporating the child's favorite cartoon character into the illustration. So if they have a favorite character, you would, like Mickey Mouse or something like that. Or you have to know the current trends. So, and I don't know them. I'll know them soon because I have a grandbaby now. So I'll know him when he's older. Carol Gray came up with this. You're using things like this. This is when like choral responding, the whole class is responding. This is somebody's interrupting. This means you're listening, and this means you're thinking. Use these simple things to help them. And can this be good for everybody? Not just, and tell you girls, you guys don't have to listen to this. This would be good for your boyfriend. Seriously. Because for your significant others, because sometimes we don't catch it. We just don't. I mean, I don't mean to be putting our gender down, guys. I'm really not. It's just I know what happens. My wife, she tells me something to do, and then I don't pick up my socks off the floor. What socks? I don't see any socks. Because I just don't. We've been married 33 years. Okay, here's an example. Here's a young man that say is in high school and he wants to take out this girl, and he's thinking she's going to reject me and all this stuff, and it's just a process to help that student engage with that in a social situation. That's just an example. You can see they're talking in their thoughts, and they're talking in their thoughts. And I'll help them relax, right? So, in conclusion, for this is, and then there's social stories. I'll bring in some stuff about social stories on Tuesday because that'll be really good. So we'll talk about social stories on Tuesday. Although autism is a lifelong disorder, it is something that they never goes away. We can help children be engaged in their environments much better through the technology that we talked about today. These are some of the things. There are no cures, but there are ways to help them engage better. So we know there's more students on the autism spectrum identified today than there were in the past. It's still not the highest disability category, learning disability is, but it's in the top 5. Any questions? I have a question. Did you learn some good skills this time today? All right. On Tuesday, we'll learn some more about social stories, and then we'll start looking at task analysis and some other things. You guys will be virtual, and you guys will be face to face. So I'll see you guys next Tuesday. You have a great weekend. Looks like it's going to be beautiful weather today, this weekend. Enjoy as much as you can. We'll talk to you soon.